We are live and you may begin whenever you're ready, Bob.
Good evening. I am Bob Petrine. I'm the RA Treasurer and Director at Large. I want to welcome everyone joining this listening session. This is the fifth listening session conducted by Reston Association's Board of Directors, the sessions began in early September. I'd first of all like to introduce my fellow board members. And the first one I see is Tim Dowling. I also see Sarah Silverage de Sousa joining us. And sorry, Tom, we got it out of order, but Tom Mulcair, who is, and we are also joined just recently by our president, Karen Anton. And I'd like to also acknowledge our acting CEO, Larry Butler, Mike Leone, Director of Communications, and Sean Barami, our excellent technical person who keeps us all straight. Thank you for joining us this evening. This evening, like last year's listening sessions, we have been conducting these sessions virtually due to the continuing pandemic. We had planned to host these sessions in person this year, but with the recent spike in Delta variant, the board felt it was important to keep staff and our members safe by conducting them online. We've had to make a slight change to tonight's meeting time. This listening session was supposed to run until 8 p.m. or 8:30 p.m. However, the Board of Directors has called a special budget meeting with fiscal at 8 p.m. We will need to end this listening session a little early than originally planned. But tonight is about us listening to you. We want to hear your comments and feedback. Tonight, like the other listening sessions, we hope to get your feedback on a couple of topics important to this association and to our board. Those are managing Reston's open spaces, and secondly, assisting the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, PRAC, with their work plan to gather member input on RA amenities, including the Shadowwood Pool, which is in the South Lakes District. I also have a couple of topics specific to the south side of Reston. First of all, the health of Lake Audubon and Thoreau, the projected, the problems that we've had in past couple of years with the algae bloom. And then secondly, a topic that has come up in other sessions, the condition of the trails, the heavy use of the trails. To help get the conversation started about preserving open space, I've asked our acting CEO, Larry Butler, to take a few minutes to share an update on how RA is participating in the community conversation and managing Reston's open spaces and where things stand now. So I'll turn it over to Larry. Larry, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Bob. I think most everybody on this call has probably already heard this, so I'll be relatively brief. But with the last year and a half, we had obviously a very challenging year for the entire planet, for that, not just Reston. But one of the things that we saw, which I actually thought was really refreshing, was the really large increase in people using our parkland, common areas, trails, lakes, everything. And as most of you know, we had about 1,300 acres of parkland, about 20% of the land in Reston, minus the Dulles corridor. And that includes the pathways, lakes, ball fields, picnic pavilions, et cetera, et cetera. So, one of the things that we saw throughout the pandemic, and it continues today, which is actually a really good sign, is that more and more people are out and about. Now, we'll see how that goes as we get into the colder weather. We're not quite there yet, but we saw a huge increase in the use of the pathways, and as I mentioned, the lakes. So there was a lot more trash too. So we had to kind of step up our vigilance on trash pickup and so forth. And we were aided in that by a number of volunteer efforts too, which I'm really happy to report. But again, the kind of the takeaway is it's great to see people out enjoying those things for which they're paying. And I've heard from, a few people said, hey, well, I decided to go up to, I live in Southwest and I went up to explore the trails on the north side. And they were like, hey, this is really cool, so, and I'm sure you had people from the north going to the south. So it was exciting to see that. One of the challenges we're having right now is, with staffing, finding it's a challenging job market there. So getting and retaining people is a challenge. And then we've had some pretty severe weather events. A few weeks ago, we had what was essentially between a 25 and 50-year storm in the southwestern area that actually lifted a bridge and moved it about 20 yards down. It's been replaced and fixed and so forth, but kind of shows you the power of the weather. And so whether it's a large windstorm where we've got to have a major tree response with our arborist crew or our construction crews putting bridges back, we continue to deal with those, and I think those will continue. Bob, you mentioned in your opening comments about the lakes. We were much more proactive this year. And I think Tom, Director Mulcairn on the call, he could maybe speak to this, but I know with Lake Throw, where we had we had a little excitement last year. That has been proactively addressed, and we're going to continue that program and have that in the draft budget for 2022. And I think the results of that, speak to themselves, and maybe Tom will say something about that. So we do continue to do the monitoring of the water quality in the lakes, and that's from an ecological standpoint, not for swimming. And we've been really proactive this year. And then two interesting projects that are underway related to our stream restoration is USGS is that's just commenced a long-term stream monitoring program in both the Glade and Snake Den watersheds. We've got a weather station at the Glade Pool parking lot. And that's really going to advance the science and benefits of urban stream restoration. I mean, that's a project that was started, over a decade ago. And so we're really excited to see that get underway. And then the second project is one that's it's still in the setup phase. Is the College of William and Mary, assisted by George Mason and Virginia Tech, is starting a research project on managing non-native invasive plants in mitigated wetlands and stream restoration areas. And so they're looking at, they're doing recon in the field right now on where those sites will be, where they're going to be, doing the research and management options. So those are two pretty neat things that wouldn't even come to Reston were it not for the stream restoration program that we've been doing for many years. So that's a little primer. I'm happy to answer any questions if people have them, but that's what I have to say right now for my opening remarks.
Very good. The other topic that we had mentioned at the outset was the work that the Parks and Recreational Advisory Committee is doing. And I noticed that John Farrell, who is the vice chair of that committee, and Tom Mulcairn, who is the board liaison to the committee, are both on. And if I could put John on the spot, if you could speak to the working of the committee, it would be great.
No good deed goes unpunished. Thanks, Bob.
Oh, I saw you. I had to take advantage of it.
Yeah, God knows. Tammy wants to be heard, though. So
I will get to her.
Hey, you have to live with it, Bob. If it were me.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. I have to go to another meeting. I've got 5 minutes. Larry, thank you so much for bringing up the pathways. I wanted you to know there are 4, maybe 5 residents on this call, but I wanted Larry to know I got 2 calls when the Board of Supervisors added or publicized that RA trails were part of the county trail network. And I think Larry knows this, but working on the task force for the last 18 months, we are desperately in the land use chapter and others trying to figure out if there's any way we can get RA to get some money to pay for the maintenance of the trails the people across the county are using. I'm frequently on Nextdoor and see people from outside Reston commenting on the bridge that flew off during the last storm, for example. So it is absolutely positively fact that the trails are being used by non-RA members. In addition, we know that the trail network and RA's beautiful open space are being used as marketing material for developers in the corridor who are not members. So this is a concern that I wanted RA board to understand. We are really in the task force extremely concerned and trying desperately to get RA some funding. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know, but we are going to try. One other thing I want to say before I have to jump off and go to a town hall on protecting Hidden Creek Golf Course from having a 4-acre retention pond slapped down in the middle of it, is that from a member standpoint, and Bob does Bob and Tammy does Tammy, and Bob is the nice part of this couple. I'm not. And everybody knows that. I please implore the board to treat RA as a sophisticated homeowners association and prioritize the care and maintenance of existing amenities before anything else is added on to the capital expenditure docket. We, in my opinion, this is folly to be considering anything like covered tennis at this point or other things that have long-ranging maintenance costs involved when we have the need to pay attention to all of our wonderful amenities that are aging out at the same time. So thank you all for what you're doing. Thanks staff for what they're doing. Cam, hopefully I'll talk to you soon with some more questions on master plan. Thanks, John Farrell, for understanding how humans work. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
No, Tammy, I have a vested interest in, preserving marriages.
55 years and counting.
There you go. Bob,
So, John,
go ahead.
if you could
Okay.
speak to the work of the committee, that would be great.
Sure. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee was tasked by the board with soliciting community input on the future of the Shadowwood pool. And we've learned a lot about Shadowwood pool already, and we have a lot more to learn. With the support and the help of Mike Leone, who's on this call, and Laura Kowalski, who isn't, and Hob Brock, who isn't, and Nate, whose last name escapes me. Larry, can you help me out? Nate's last name?
Wheeler.
Yeah.
Nate Wheeler.
Yep.
Be quiet.
With the help of that staff, we have done a first for Reston Association. We have reached out to 1,700 households in the 15 or 17 clusters immediately surrounding the Shadowwood pool to solicit their input. And at the last point, we were above 400, closing in on 500 participants. I haven't gotten my report from Laura yet, but it was north of 400 when last we checked, which is an amazing response rate from my friends in who do direct mail kind of solicitations. If you get 10 or 15% people responding to a survey of any kind of request for input, you're doing amazing at 10 or 15%. We're way above that. We're almost a third of all of the households responding. I've actually dug into the individual responses, an Excel spreadsheet, and they're anonymized. All we had asked them for was their street, just so we could understand what cluster they belong to. And we had 2 open houses, at which we had about 40 people show up. But again, that's probably one of the most intense or numerous turnout to have at an open house like that. Tonight, I think I counted 5 non-board members showing up to this session. So having 25 people show up on a Saturday and a Sunday was pretty good. And then we had a Zoom session. And we're learning a lot about how to do community outreach that we'll want to share with the board going forward. Doing the door knockers was absolutely terrific. I mean, that's how we got people to do it. We had volunteers. I hung 150 door knockers on doors in my immediate neighborhood. And we covered all of the other clusters. So we actually did hang a door on every door in those 15 clusters. We probably don't need to have an open house for 2 hours as we did, because people showed up for the first hour and nobody showed up for the second hour, or few, if any, showed up for the second hour. We only had 1 person participate in the Zoom call, so kind of a turnout not unlike the one we're seeing tonight. But the other thing we've learned is that the neighbors want Shadowwood to stay open. It's overwhelming, more than 2 to 1. The reasons they don't use Shadowwood is because the water is cold, because the trees that have doubled in height since my oldest lived there and swam there, and we would go there after I got home from work. Those trees have doubled in height to the point that almost the entire deck is in shadow all day long. And that has enabled black mold to grow on the deck. And it keeps the temperature of the water below 70 degrees all summer long. It also, with the extensive amount of overhang from the adjacent trees, enables a lot of junk to find its way into the pool, and leaves the impression with our membership that the pool water is not clean. So those were all insights. And the survey stays open till November 1st. We hope to have some kind, or enable Laura, because the motion was for the staff to make a report on the community input. So we expect Laura will be making that presentation to the board, and Julie and I will probably show up and hold her coat while she does it, because she's doing a tremendous job and she's really internalized all of the responses. But it's clear that the community that lives around Shadowwood Pool wants Shadowwood to be available to them, and wants RA to make it a more appealing community, a facility for the community. One of the other things that comes across is the degree to which people look at our pools, not just as a place to exercise, but as a place for community, as a place to interact with their neighbors. So it's not just, it's a place where they hang around on the deck and they see their neighbors, they see their neighbors' kids, the kids interacting, causes neighbors to be introduced to each other. So it's a really eye-opening exercise, and we hope to share those insights with you here, in 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. I went on too long, I'm sorry.
Thank you, John. It was an excellent update on the work of the of PrAC. Since we have a limited number of members on the call, let me ask, are there any questions that anyone would like to bring up, or issues that they'd like to discuss with board members? Erwin, let me find you here.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great.
I live at, my name is Erwin Flashman. I live at 1327 Buttermilk Lane. The conversation this evening brings up one thing that I think is important to pay attention to and to act on. And that is something that the board has already acted on, that is made a determination about. But I think it's important that staff undertake the efforts to fulfill that direction that the board has made, and that is to appoint a senior environmental person at the level of senior staff. Almost everything that has been discussed this evening has some environmental aspect. And it is clear that as climate change is upon us and becomes more impacting, that the environmental aspects of what is happening and how resilient Reston needs to be, and what we can do to lower our contribution to growing climate change needs to be examined, and it has to be examined across every action that RA undertakes, so that we don't have the left hand doing something that goes contrary to what the right hand would like to do. And that we see occasionally happening here in Reston, as well as elsewhere. So I would urge the board, and Larry in particular, because he has the immediate responsibility, to undertake a beginning of looking for someone to fill that slot, and sharing that information with the public so that we can help in making that choice, so that it's a good choice and someone who really will work across the lines. So the creation of silos in this aspect is not a good thing. And so I urge you to undertake that action. The other comment I have about this evening is that the lack of public participation in this meeting, which is open to the entire community of Reston, is quite evident. We have the usual suspects who show up, like myself and John Farrell, and that's really about it. We had Tammy earlier, and then if you look around, we have staff and members of the board. I'm not sure who BG is, but whoever that is, you're welcome to be here and speak up. But something should be done to attract greater participation. This is supposed to be an open forum for people across Reston to come and speak with the board and air their concerns, find out what's going on, ask questions, and yet we have zero participation for all intents and purposes. This is something that needs to be looked at seriously, because if you do not have that participation, if you are unable to attract participation from the community, then I think that the board has failed in its duties. It should be actively involved with the community, and it doesn't seem that this is what is happening. And so I leave my comments to you for whatever action you deem appropriate.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm going to unmute BG. Oops, I'm sorry.
Bob, would you like me to do it?
Yeah, please, would you? I keep on getting.
You should be able to unmute yourself.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name is Burton Griffith. So there's the answer on that. I live at 11649 Mediterranean Court. I'm also the president of the Mediterranean Villa Cluster. I'd like to thank RA staff and the RA board for taking the time to do this listening session tonight. Thinking optimistically, maybe the reason for the lack of member participation is that people are generally happy with the way things are going in RA. Another explanation is they're just busy with their lives, and they have bigger issues to deal with. I agree with Larry that RA is an ideal place to live during the pandemic. Certainly enjoyed living here over the past year and a half. And thanks again to the RA board members for their service in general and their time tonight. One issue I'd like to bring up that I've tried to bring up before and haven't noticed a change is the issue of member privacy. That's why I'm not sharing a video of myself or sharing my full name on the screen because I have concerns about what it seems to be the RA policy of distributing all public meetings out on YouTube where anyone in the world can view them. I think they should be available to members of the RA, but I don't think they should be available to anyone in the world. Next issue, on the open space management issue. This is kind of a small issue, but it's dog poop bags. I assume that it's RA that's financing the provision of the dog poop bags that I see next to RA trails that I walk on regularly. And I assume that the intentions behind that are very great, that it's to prevent dog poop from getting into the natural areas. But I've many times seen dog owners pulling many bags out of those dispensers all at once. So there are people who are using these dispensers as their sole provider of dog poop bags. I think that, Reston, people who live in Reston, the responsible dog owners, they already know to take a bag with them when they're walking their dog. Meanwhile, I think the non-responsible people are not going to pick up their bags, pick up their dog poop, whether there's a bag provided for them or not. And I have frequently picked up loose, empty bags from the trails that are just kind of floating around in the environment. So I think this intention, which I'm sure was to protect the environment, what it's actually doing is it's contributing to plastic in the environment. And so I think the provision of dog poop bags should be discontinued. I would like to comment that the beach volleyball court by Lake Ann seems really popular and really well used. And so if there was I think there could be demand for a similar facility maybe in South Reston. So I don't know if that would fit in Shadowwood or some other place, but I just wanted to note that it seems like that facility is really popular. It's up the hill off North Shore Drive from Lake Ann. I don't remember the name of the little park there, but it's a popular place and it seems to be used by a variety of people. It's not just the same people there every day, but it is getting used very regularly by different people. Another thing about the outreach that you've done on Shadowwood and what amenities members desire, I think that when you ask people what they want, but you don't tell them it's going to cost them anything, they're going to say they want more. So, just keep that in mind. If you open it up and, just let people wish for anything, then they'll pile on the wishes. But, somebody, RA members have to pay for these things. So just keep that in mind. And, I wish that you could incorporate some sort of assessment in your outreach to the Shadowwood people about, would you be willing to pay X dollars more if you had this option, so that they can choose between, express their preferences, but do it in a way that factors in cost issues. Another issue on outdoor space, leaf blowers. Leaf blowers have been banned in DC. I think that ban takes effect next year. I could be mistaken. I would love to ban leaf blowers in Reston. I am not sure that that's possible, but what I would like to see at a minimum is for RA to adopt a policy that RA will no longer use gas-powered blowers. At least commit to phasing them out. RA will no longer purchase any gas-powered blowers for any grounds maintenance of any sort. There are electric battery-powered blowers that provide commercial level power for leaf blowing that are options now and will be even better options in the years ahead. So another, I think the most important issue that I wanted to bring up tonight is what I feel is a lack of responsiveness from RA on applications that members submit that need review and a decision by the DRB. My community submitted an application a little more than 2 months ago, and so far we have not even gotten a date set for when the DRB is going to consider our issue. So this is the lack of responsiveness. I feel like it's to the point that we're not getting due process and we're being left in limbo, just left with uncertainty, facing a risk, if we decide to do anything without RA approval. And, life is going on. We have environmental, we've got climate change, we've got winter coming, and things need to get done. The lack of responsiveness is preventing our cluster board from fulfilling our responsibilities to our members to properly maintain our infrastructure. One more thing on the open space issue. I'm sure you're aware of the application to redevelop a portion of the Vantage Hill property. There's a kind of a derelict pool area that has not been used for many years. It's covered over with tarps or pool coverings, and every year those fill up with water. The building structures that are a part of the pool are just rotting and slowly falling apart. The Vantage Hill board, I think, is trying to make the best of a difficult situation, but there's an application to redevelop that into townhomes, which I've said that I think I'd like to see that redevelopment happen if it means that we get rid of the situation that's there right now. But if we're looking for some more open space in Reston, that property is basically built already on top of a stream bed. And so I would like to see a solution, if possible, especially if this redevelopment doesn't work out, where RA, makes a deal to acquire that property and just convert it into open space. Just bulldoze the pool structure and, return that stream bed to a natural state. That's all I have. Thanks a lot for listening.
I want to thank you very much for your very thoughtful comments, Burton. I see Jennifer Justruck, one of our directors, would like to make a comment. So,
thanks, Bob.
Go ahead, Jen.
Burton, it's nice to see you on a non-comp plan meeting. So thanks for joining us. You had quite a list and I took a lot of notes, but I just wanted to speak to one that you had mentioned earlier in your comments about privacy, and let you know that the Board Governance Committee, which is headed by our director, John Mooney, Tim Dowling, who's on this call, and I, and also Aaron, who I don't see on our call, but those are the 4 members of that committee. We did put on our goals list to talk about how we could still kind of satisfy our needs from the association and perspective about participation in our meetings while also trying to maintain that confidentiality, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with a creative solution. But it is on our work plan list for 2021 into 2022. And I'm sure there's probably some other people on the call that can talk a little bit more about some of your other concerns. But I took lots of notes. That's great feedback. Thank you for giving it to us.
I'd like to recognize, as Jennifer mentioned, we had another director that joined the call. John Mooney is our vice president of the board, and I'd like to recognize John.
And Bob, is it okay
Yes.
if Cam addresses the timeline question? We've all seen Burton's email before. Cam, sorry to put you on the spot. If you can quickly address it, that'd be great.
Sure. No, it's totally okay. Thanks, Burton. I did get a copy of your email that you sent to several board members earlier today or this weekend, and I will follow up with you personally tomorrow. But just to give you an update, I do understand that there were some things happening back and forth in terms of our understanding of the application, but either this evening or tomorrow, first thing, you should get an email confirming the 10/12 panel is the date that the application will be reviewed for Mediterranean villas. But I wanted to follow up on one of the points in your email, which is we do have a structured process in place that is not leaving members in limbo, which I think is one of the larger points that you made in your email. There is a process in the deed that actually gives exactly kind of what you outlined, and maybe that's what you were mimicking. So technically, the DRB has 60 days to respond to an application. So you have 30 days to review it and then 30 days to provide a decision. And if you do not get a decision within 60 days of submitting a completed application, and that's one of those trigger words that we want to make sure that members focus on, a completed application is required in order for that clock to start. You can submit a letter or an email to the DRB secretary, who's LaShonda Graham, who will have 10 days to respond to your request for a decision. And if you don't get a response or a decision within that 10 days or after that 10 days, your application will automatically be deemed approved. So it's kind of along the same lines of the thought process that you had, but it is formalized in the deed and the resolution. So you have that information. If that ever becomes an issue, which I'm hoping that it doesn't, but if it does, you do have that recourse and you do have that ability to do so. And as the director of the department, I apologize if we, drop the ball, but you can always reach out to me directly if you have any other follow-up questions as well.
Thank you, Cam. Do any of my fellow directors have any burning issues that they'd like to bring up this evening?
Bob, I'd just like to make a statement when we were talking about the dog poop bags. Some of us on this call have personal experience of forgetting poop bags and then being caught with the dog. So Larry, just something if we could look into is compostable poop bags and maybe work with a local vendor to sponsor it. Sure, it'll be, happy to put somebody's logo on poop bags if they'll pay for it.
Sure. Yeah, we can look into that. And also in response to what Burton had said, and I do appreciate the comments, Burton, a lot of the dispensers are actually owned and operated by the clusters themselves. We do have a number, I don't know the exact number that we have out there, but a lot of clusters have their own because their shared concern of dogs going in their cluster common areas. So, but I'll make a note about the compostable bags and see what we can find out.
Thank you.
Tim, is there anything that you wanted to bring up while we have a few minutes here?
Thanks, Bob. I wanted to address Burton's privacy concerns. And I second what Jennifer had to say. You're not the first RA member to raise this issue. We had another member at a prior listening session raise exactly the same privacy concerns. And she was a former police officer, I believe, and she expressed a special concern about identity theft and also personal security concerns. And Burton, just for your information and edification, there is a related privacy issue that has to do with a request to the Elections Committee asking the Elections Committee to release a list of people in Reston who voted. And that is something that greatly concerns me in terms of privacy, because it bears directly upon our right to vote and our right to vote in secret, which includes our right not to vote. And I would encourage you to, if you are concerned about that as a privacy matter, I would encourage you to make your views known to our election committee on that issue. Thank you.
Tom, anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on what Larry was discussing earlier. This time last year, we had a lot more people on one of these calls, basically because we had such a problem with the water on Lake Thoreau. And this year, it's amazing the difference between the two. With the algae bloom that was out of control last time, to I've lived on the lake for 30 years, and it's as crystal clear as can be, and has not been that way, repeatedly for a long time. So I had said this to Larry before, just, hats off to the people that are actually monitoring the lake and doing their job.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Very good. Are there any other issues that Burton, you appear to be the only member left on the call. Is there anything else that you would like to bring up? Be
Bob,
happy to.
I think John has raised his hand.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Could you unmute John?
Yep. John, you can talk.
Thank you. Three things quickly. One is Mr. Griffin should be gratified to know that in the response to that the community has had relative to the survey, there's not a whole lot of gold plating in the requested changes they'd like to see to Shadowwood. It almost entirely relates to getting sunlight to the water surface, which of course, heating the pool by passive solar is the most green solution. So there isn't a whole lot of extra money that we're seeing a lot of people asking for. So the renovation work is focused really on making the pool water a little warmer. So hopefully that's satisfactory or a source of gratitude there that they aren't asking for it to be gold plated. The other thing I wanted to mention is we, as citizens of the Commonwealth, when we vote, and I've been involved in election administration for decades here in Virginia and several decades before that in Massachusetts, I can basically look up the voting record of any citizen in the Commonwealth. I can find out whether or not Sarah voted or John voted or Karen voted in the last election, or the last 10 elections, the last 20 elections. I can't know how they voted, but I can know if they voted. And part of the reason that people are interested in having that information is that, in fact, we've made it available in the past without any great breach of privacy. But when you're trying to run an at-large campaign with 24,000 households, expecting anybody in 1 month to try and make contact with 24,000 households is completely unrealistic. And it's unfair to candidates to put that burden on them when they're running at large in particular. So the thought is that if we only have 15 or 20% of our electorate participating, it would be worthwhile to enable those candidates to be in touch with or knock on the door of the parties who are interested in the election, and make it a more realistic effort to actually reach out to the citizens who want to participate. So that's the thought process, is to make it actually doable, to actually make it possible for a candidate to be in touch with the people who care enough to be involved, to have voted in prior elections. And it's nothing new in politics. We've always been able to know who the voting populace was and who participated in prior elections in all of our municipal, our state, and our federal elections. So there's not a real precedent for it being a privacy issue. I think that's a red herring.
Hey, Bob, just real quick, if I could.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. Dowling. I really would appreciate if you didn't interrupt me. I mean, if you can show me the basic respect I've shown you tonight, I would really appreciate it. That would be a change too. The last thing I want to talk about is the Little League backstop at Hook Road, at the corner of Fairways and Hook Road. That property, that backstop is a real safety hazard. It's only a couple of feet off the curb. The kids who use that baseball field are 8 or 9 years old. They're not, we're not talking 12-year-olds here. We're talking kids who easily get confused and distracted and easily find themselves stepping into the street. And so, yeah, I think it's a safety issue to get that backstop moved. And I heard the other night that there's a possibility that moving that backstop could be delayed while it's incorporated into the major site plan that would be authorized for the bathrooms to be built on Hook Road. And I hope that we can do anything possible not to delay that relocation. It only would have to happen if the relocation would disturb more than 2,500 square feet. And based on my prior experience, I don't think that moving that particular backstop is going to cause disturbance of that much ground. And so I would really encourage Larry and Chris to do whatever they can to move that relocation forward immediately. I don't think it should be folded into a major site plan submission and cause that unsafe condition to be perpetuated. Thank you for your time.
Tim, you had a comment.
Just very briefly, in addition to the privacy concerns that I mentioned before, I think a proposal to release the voting lists raises serious social equity concerns. My concern is that the communities that are not voting now in large numbers generally are the affordable housing communities or the lower income communities, Winterthur Apartments, Crescent Apartments. And if we take steps as an organization to encourage candidates to focus primarily on people who have voted in the past, those communities are going to continue to be overlooked. During my campaign, I handed out hundreds of flyers in those communities, even though certain people who supported my campaign told me that it wasn't a very efficient way to campaign because those communities, those clusters, those neighborhoods don't vote in large numbers. To my mind, that was all the more reason to go to those neighborhoods, to make them feel like their vote is important. And I would like to see an election in which all the candidates go to all Reston communities, including the communities that have not voted in the past in large numbers, and to tell those neighbors, those Restonians, that their votes matter too and that their votes count. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Are there any other comments from
Bob,
members?
it looks like Burton has a comment.
Please, go ahead.
Burton, you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think Mr. Dowling said kind of what I was thinking, probably better than I could say it myself. But you know, the idea that we should not only get the names together of the voters and focus the attention on them. Besides the privacy concern, I totally agree that it's an equity problem. And I would think that, you know, what you should be doing is trying to get votes from people who are not voting. instead of focusing more and more attention on the people who already have the time and the resources to pay attention to these issues. And, instead of working however many jobs they are working and, trying to take care of kids and pay the rent and, all these things. So, yeah, I totally disagree with the idea that, RA should facilitate campaigning to target the people who are already the most likely to participate. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments that anybody would like to make? Okay, seeing none, I would like to, oh, okay. Erwin, can you unmute Erwin, please? Thank you.
I'd like to jump into this discussion about the voters. I have had some experience in this matter. And in the first election in which I worked in Reston, we made an extraordinary effort to reach out to all voters. And in fact, did it with a bilingual leaflet. So that was the first time I understand that there was any attempt to do a bilingual leaflet. And that did not raise the level of participation. You have two issues and you're mixing up two issues. One issue is to let candidates know who are the people who did actually vote. And the second is reaching out to other populations who did not vote and getting them to vote as well. But they are two different issues and you should not mix them up. Both are valid and both require efforts. Certainly, there is an effort, and it has to be by the candidates, to reach out to those people who are voters, because the candidates who are running opposed will have different points of view, presumably, about various issues, and they would like to reach out to those people who do vote to have them understand what their positions are and to convince them that the positions they are holding are the proper ones and that they should support. Reaching out to voters, potential voters, not actual voters, but potential voters, people who have the right to vote, but do not exercise that right, is a totally different exercise and a totally different effort. And to say that you should not do one because it will interfere with the other is, I think, a mistaken notion. If you're going to reach out to urge people to vote, then that's what you should be doing. And that should be an exercise undertaken by RA. And it should be done well before the election. And that is a matter of education. It is not a matter of conducting an election campaign where you are trying to convince people to vote for me or vote for you. So I think to confuse the two issues is not helpful and in fact is harmful. And so I would urge still that the voting lists be released to the candidates so that they know with whom they are dealing, and that RA undertake a separate campaign to urge people to vote and understand how they can exercise that right to vote, and that all Restonians, whether they are citizens of the United States or not, whether they are renters or owners of property, have the right to exercise that vote and how they can do that. And that requires time. And that also requires more than just a focus on voting. It requires a focus on you are a citizen of Reston and you have right to participate and you have a right to opine. And one of the ways of opining is by voting. But there are other ways, and that is speaking out and being present at meetings and taking a role in participation. And if you have needs, expressing what those needs are so that the association can at least hear what they are and then address them if they feel that they are competent to do so. These are different issues and they should not be mixed up. And nor should the issue of non-participating populations be used as an argument against making available the voting lists, that is the list of voters, to the candidates. Thank you.
I think they're both excellent points. I think I would agree with you, Orwin, that they are two different issues. It's one that we should be taking up. Sarah, you raised your hand.
I did. 2 points. One is thank you all so much. It's no doubt that both sides has the minority and our apartment owners on their mind. I remember a recent conversation with Cam where we talked about RA should do more to engage our apartment owners. That said, I think I would like to hear from all of the members we have here tonight if they had any budget priorities, because I know in a few minutes, the rest of us are going into our budget discussions and it'll be helpful to hear. Anybody can start. Thank you.
Well,
Now, don't all speak at once.
That was a perfect segue, if nobody has any comments, to mention that there are going to be 2 public hearings on the budget. The first is going to be on October 6th, and the second is going to be on October 13th. And if memory serves me correctly, no? I get a no from our president. At least that's what I have on my calendar, is the 6th and the 13th.
Second one is November, Bob. I'm trying to think where we landed on October 6th or October 13th.
I believe it's October 13th.
October 13th and November 10th, I believe, are the
I'm
two.
going to my master calendar here real quick.
Oh, I need to update my calendar.
Yes, yeah, October 13th is 7 o'clock is the budget hearing, and I believe it was November. I'm moving through the month here. November 10th is the second one at 7
Also
o'clock.
7 o'clock, yeah.
Very good. If there are no other comments, I want to thank everybody who are participating in this evening's listening session. As members have questions, if Sean, if you could stick up the email addresses, I think you had that on a slide, so that members might see where they could reach the at-large directors.
Yes, sir. Mike is sharing it.
Super. And you can reach me at my email is ra-bod treasurer at reston.org. Tom Mulcairn is rabod at large 1 at reston.org. Kim Dowlings is ra-bod at large 3 at reston.org, and Sarah's is ra-bod at large 4 at reston.org. I want to thank everybody for their participation, particularly my fellow board members, since we go from here to another meeting. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. And I bid you all a good evening.